I'm a full-time writer and full-time mother of 2 children. This is my 4th book with Penguin Publishing, although my 8th novel. I've got another novel coming out in November, another coming out next May, and another novel coming out next fall. So I'm pretty busy right now, but I'm really excited about this book. It's a return for me to the South Carolina Lowcountry, which is one of my favorite places on earth. And it's getting some really good press right now, and I've heard from some readers. It just came out last Tuesday, but I've heard from some readers who've read it, and it's all been really positive. So I'm very excited about this book, and I'm looking forward to telling you a little bit about it.
Hi, I'm Tanya Michna, the author of Necessary Arrangements. It's my first book with NAL accent, which Karen also writes for. I got started writing because I love, love, love books, and I'm very bad at math. And I literally spent most of my junior high and high school math classes writing short stories and distributing them amongst my classmates, and thought, this is really what I want to do. This idea, my agent helped this book come into being. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever tried to write. I've written short stories and novellas and shorter books under a different name. And this one's about 2 sisters. One's about to get married, and the other one is fighting breast cancer. And so for one of them, it's the happiest time of her life, and for another one, oh, not so much. And my family's lost several women to breast cancer, and my agent guaranteed me this could be a really wonderful, beautiful book. And there were days that I just would shut down my computer and think, I cannot tell this story, and even if I do, who's going to want to read it? Because it does not sound like the fun beach read of the year. And the emails that I have gotten since it came out about people who it's touched have just, if I never wrote anything again, I would be glad that I did this. But I am actually still writing. I'm on deadline now, and I'll have another book out with NAL early in 2009 called Baggage Claim. Like Karen, I'm a full-time writer, and I have 2 preschoolers. So normally between deadline and my 2 preschoolers, my sanity is questionable, but that just goes back to what we were talking about earlier, the eccentric writer persona, and I'm honing that.
Okay, I'll tell you a little bit about the book. And whenever I speak to readers, they always want to know, where did the idea for this book come from? I've written, I'm always advised to write what you know. But after 8 novels, you sort of, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to bore everybody if I continue to, harp on the same subjects. But although you'll find recurring themes in all of my books. I love old houses, so an old house is always a main character in my books. I love history, so you're always going to find a large chunk of history. There's always like an interesting mother-daughter relationship. I wonder where that comes from. And all of my books are set in the South. I like to say that what I write is called grit-lit, Southern women's fiction. I try to write the books that I like to read, which is a woman's journey, Southern fun characters. Not every Southern family is dysfunctional, but we all have our eccentric aunts and whatever, and I always try to people my stories with interesting characters like that. Big Southern families, siblings, parents, and just the community. I always use the setting and the South as a main character in my stories. This book, The Memory of Water, I explore, it's the story of 2 sisters who were raised in McClellanville, South Carolina, on the water. The main character, Marnie, is an avid sailor, or had been, until she and her sister, when they're little girls, are in a sailboat accident with their mother, and their mother drowns. And something happens that night that the 2 sisters, they don't talk about it. They each saw something different happen, and this secret erodes their lives to the point when Marnie graduates from high school. She goes out to Arizona, which is the desert, never wanting to be near the ocean again, and there she is. But what I wanted to explore, I grew up with 3 brothers, and the thing I always wanted most in life was to have a sister. So I had 3 brothers, but I do have a daughter. I have a daughter and a son, and the whole thing of sibling rivalry, to me, it's just this mystery. I see children who love each other dearly, siblings who love each other dearly, who would never lay a hand on the other. And then there's my children. And my brother's not, my middle finger is crooked because one of my brothers broke it when I was a child. pulling it back all the way back to my wrist. You know, and now I can laugh at it because it must have driven my parents crazy, us sitting, the three of us in the back seat. My little brother didn't come around for a little bit longer, but I remember my father worked in Manhattan, and we would drive from our house in New Jersey to visit family in Mississippi and Florida with the three of us in the back seat just like pounding away at each other. I mean, that's a long trip. So the whole sibling rivalry where, you can see it as, it can be really humorous at times. I mean, when my kids were little, I used to have to carry a measuring tape with me so that if they were going to split a dessert, I could measure out each half of the cake or whatever. And, and I'd see people staring at me at the other tables, and the only people that ever kind of looked at it weird were people who weren't parents of siblings.
You know what you do, though? You make one of them cut it in half, and the other one gets to pick which one.
They'd still fight. It has to be all me. So, but anyway, so this whole sibling thing is just, it's such a mystery to me. And then I see my mother. She's the oldest of 5 girls and 1 boy, and their relationship is always fascinating, again, because I always wanted a sister, and so watching her with her sisters. And that's sort of the subject of my previous book, Learning to Breathe. But anyway, I just thought I was going to take it in the not-so-humorous way to go back to the root of the sibling rivalry and what caused it. And that was the coolest thing about this book, because you don't find out what it was that drove the sisters were so close growing up to that point of their mother's accident, and then after that their whole lives fell apart, and you don't know why until the end. And it's sort of, it was fun, and nobody has guessed the ending yet. So it's the kind of book I like to read. It's got a little bit of a mystery, a little bit of a love story, but it's mostly a relationship drama. And in this case, it's 2 sisters sort of trying to come to grips with who they are now and to solve a secret from the past. But I think that's it in a nutshell. Did you want to tell us a little bit about it? Sure. Absolutely. We can do questions. Yes. The memory, and that's funny because this book was originally called A Year of Rain, because it's about Marnie, the main character, being called back from Arizona to the Low Country to help her nephew, who has been traumatized in another sailboat accident. He's a 9-year-old boy, and he's not speaking. And she's actually a special needs teacher out in Arizona. So her brother-in-law, her sister's ex-husband calls her and says, nobody can help him because you're his aunt. Can you come and help? So that's why she comes back. So that was A Year of Rain, because she's coming from the desert back to South Carolina. And I was writing the book, and there's a part where they're refurbishing a sailboat. The ex-husband is refurbishing a sailboat. And she used to love the water. That was the thing that just moved her spirit. She was, won trophy. Her goal in life used to be to win the America's Cup. And she's afraid of the water now, and you learn why. But and she approaches this boat that's up on the stands or whatever, and she touches the hull, and she feels. And it was just a sentence I wrote, and it felt like the memory of water. And as soon as I wrote that line, I'm like, ooh, that has to be the new title. And luckily, it was right when they were doing the cover conferencing. So I emailed my editor immediately. I said, we got to change the working title to The Memory of Water. And she's like, I love it. So, and that's how that came about. So.
I don't know if you guys know this or not, but authors do not always get to pick their titles. And we don't always get to pick our titles. They get changed in conferences and things. And I've been very lucky. I got to keep mine for this book, and they've already said yes on the other one. In fact, I've already got a cover for it, and I wish it was ready to show people, but they're still tweaking it. It's beautiful. Like Karen, I tend to write primarily in the South. I grew up all over the South. This book is set in Atlanta, and so is the next one. And actually, I was just realizing, because I grew up an Army brat, I've lived lots of places, and I've been around the Atlanta area for 10 years, which is the longest I've ever been anywhere. So this is, more home to me than any place else that I've ever been. She was talking about sibling rivalry and finding the humor in it, and I actually grew up in very much a chick household. It was my mom and my sister and a foster sister and another young woman that was from a troubled family that we had staying with us for a while. So a lot of my books tend to be about female relationships. I know a good bit about those. I also know a good bit about sibling rivalry and perhaps being shot at with BB guns. And I don't know who thought that daughters were gentler than sons.
Did you have iguanas put down your shirt?
No, but only because we didn't have an iguana. this book is about two sisters, and it's really about their whole family, and they've also both got love interests. So it's pretty wide in scope, the people that are important in their lives. But at the center of it are these two sisters, and there is a lot of humor there. There are jokes that people in your family get that nobody else is ever going to. My sister and I have looked at each other at the wrong time during a funeral and started laughing. And this book very much has that sense of humor. We were at a wedding in downtown Atlanta this summer, and something was said during a toast that struck a chord with me, and I knew I was going to begin sobbing. And I ran to the restroom, thought, okay, I'll just hide out until I get my cool. And I was there sniffling, and after a minute I heard someone came in, and I just thought, okay, I'm going to hide and sniff. And a minute later I heard, Tanya. I said, yeah, and it was my sister. She said, I thought I recognized the crying. She said, that was your sniff. She had been struck. She was sitting at a different table at the wedding. She had been struck by the exact same thing, and neither of us wanted to melt down in public, so she was coming to the restroom to hide out. And the funny thing about that is my sister and I could not be less alike. I mean, we have different interests. You wouldn't really look at us and think we were related. We're just so totally different, but we come from the same place, and there are those threads that will tie us together no matter where we are, and that's very much the nature of this book. The two sisters are very, very different. They've never had much in common, and in times of crisis, they're coming together in ways that they had really never expected to. And although parts of that are very sad, parts of it are extremely funny. There are things that only the two of them see the humor in that nobody else, other people would probably see as, I don't know, sick and warped. At least my sister and I have gotten that a few times. And it was in places it was very fun to write because of their relationship, because of the way they see the world. And then in other places it was slightly more emotional. The next book that I've got coming out, Baggage Claim, is not about two women who are sisters, but they could be. They're more like soul sisters, although they don't know it at first. Two women who pick up each other's suitcases at an airport, and both of them are at a point where their lives are about to come unraveled, and they meet to give each other back the suitcases and become unlikely friends. It was actually inspired by the meltdown that my 3-year-old had when she took home another little girl's Hello Kitty lunchbox instead of her Hello Kitty lunchbox. Going back to Karen's, how do you get your ideas? Very weird places, the little voices in my head. You guys are looking at watches. What? Sorry. Are you done? I think so. A lot of what I do speaking is based on question and answers. If you guys had any questions that you don't already know about me. We've covered Karen. Since 1998, I think. Yeah. For my very first book, In the Shadow of the Moon, which was, I thought, a very good book. It had an unfortunate cover. My covers have come a long way. I want to just, my next two books are a little bit different from what I'm doing right now. They're still going to be part of New American Library, which is part of Penguin, but they're not going to be the accent line, which Tanya and I both write for. They're stories for women, although guys can read them too, and my husband enjoys them. Of course, he's not allowed not to. But I actually get some fan mail from males who said, my wife was reading this book and she loved it so much and she really forced it onto me and I didn't want to read it, but when I did, I really liked, because I do put the little mystery element in there, which I guess appeals to both men and women alike. So, but my next book, I've always had a little bit of maybe a little paranormal, teeny little twist, and almost all of my books, and you would never call my books paranormal, but I always just throw that in there. There's one book, Falling Home, where they kept on finding pennies places, and things like that, small things like that. 'Cause I've had a few things happen in my life that just cannot be explained by any normal scientific explanation. So I've always been interested in that. I think my father and my grandmother are responsible for that. But my next two books are actually going to be related. It's a series. The first is they're both set in Charleston. The first is The House on Trad Street, and that will be out in November.
And I call it my Sixth Sense meets Moonlighting. I don't know if y'all ever watched that series in the 80s, I guess? 80s or 90s? 80s. It's a really, Bruce Willis was in it. And anyway, I love that show. But it was just the great repartee between the two leads, which I love that kind of dialogue, that back and forth. And so anyway, the main character is a realtor in Charleston. She specializes in historic real estate, although she hates old houses because she has the sixth sense, so she sees dead people, but she's in denial about it. And the other main character, the guy, the Bruce Willis type person, he is a true historical crime mystery writer. He solves historical mysteries and then writes books about them. He's very successful. And she inherits this old house south of Broad on Trad Street in Charleston, and he happens to be writing a book about something that happened in that book. So they solve this mystery together, and it's really, really fun. Of course, she has issues with her mother. There you go.
Does your mother read your books?
No, she doesn't. Which is part of the problem. But anyway, but you have to have some angst in your life because I don't know any truly happy person who writes. You know? and it's not really happiness. And as a matter of fact, I got an email from Pappy not too long ago, and I was just saying, back to beating my head against the wall. He said, well, I love my work. And it's not that I don't love my work or that I'm not appreciative of all my blessings. It's sometimes all those blessings at one time can be really, really difficult to handle, so, as you well know. So, any questions? Can I? Yes?
This is for both of you. If you weren't writing, what would you be doing on a 9 to 5?
Drinking heavily. I'd be playing golf or, I don't know. I'd be reading a lot, and I'd probably be a lot more patient and well-rested, and I wouldn't say a better mother, although, my kids are teenagers now, and I think this is the time. Glad I have something else to fall back on because they don't have anything to do with me. But I can't imagine doing anything else. I've worked before I had children. I worked outside, but I just can't imagine. This is so much a part of me that I just can't imagine doing anything else. So, you Tanya? Give concerts? Oh, singing? Yeah, I see him playing the piano, but nobody would pay for that.
At least you have talent. See, I don't even have that. I sent my first full-length manuscript to a New York publisher when I was either 16 or had just turned 17. Those jerks have still not answered me. Was not, but thank you. I had no fallback plan. My husband and I talk about this a lot. He recently had his midlife crisis, and he suddenly woke up and thought, "Oh, I never asked myself what do I want to do with my life?" And he said, "It's so impressive. You have always known." Literally, I've got diary entries from third grade. I'm going to be a writer. And it's really kind of scary to look back on now, because if that had not panned out for me, there really was no fallback plan. That would have been unfortunate, I think. And I can't not write. People can not pay me for writing. I can get rejected. That happens. But I can't stop writing. And somebody was once talking about their husband. She unfortunately did not have a very supportive family, because it doesn't always look like a job. We don't get in our car. We don't drive to our office buildings. We're sitting in a corner of the house listening to our music. Doing laundry, feeding the kids, because apparently you have to do that like 3 times a day. Well, mine are very young. They're still growing. And people don't always respect it as a job. And I've had friends who say, "Oh, well, I'm trying to finish the book, but my family doesn't." And they said to my husband, "You're so wonderfully supportive of her." He goes, "Have you tried living with her when she's not writing?" He said, "It's much easier just to support the career and say go for it, because when she's not writing, she gets a little crazy." I have a degree in history, and I've done a lot of freelance business writing, journalism type stuff. I think even if I weren't writing books, I would still be writing in some form or another. So there's really nothing else that I wanted to do, which is good, because my spectrum of talents is really limited.
Sort of in the same vein, I was recently asked, I'm going to be doing a thing on gather.com that was set up by my publisher, and they had me write these little, like 2-page intro kind of thing, and basically just telling about the writer's life, a little about me and the book and what I do and that kind of thing. And one of the things that I sort of explored that I've never really done or spoken about, and I'm kind of wondering why, and I guess there's always a measure of guilt. You know, my son called from school the other day that they had a half day. It was an out-of-uniform day. He wears a uniform every day. And he called me, Mom, I wore my uniform. Everybody else is in their jeans and stuff. Can you come bring it? I'm like, no, I really can't. You know, this is my work time when you're at school, and, you know, that would be 30, 40 minutes out of my work time to come bringing you clothes that it was your responsibility to remember anyway. You know, and sometimes I feel like that's a good thing. I'm teaching them responsibility. But they're, you know, I don't make it to 100% of their basketball games or whatever because I can't. You know, I travel, I do have deadlines, that kind of thing. But I'm there at most of them. Oh, well, my mother never came to any of my things, so maybe that's where that came from, too. But, again, I digress. But I'm thinking, but there's so many other things that I am teaching my children that I couldn't if I weren't doing this. I've had some career setbacks. I've had, you know, really bad career setbacks. I've had, you know, you get the reviews and you get, and I show my children that every time I'm knocked out of the saddle, I get back up on, you know, and no matter what you do in your life, you can't stay down. You can't. I mean, that's to give up, you know, and I have over my desk in my office a quote that my son gave to me. It's the famous Wayne Gretzky quote, something like, you know, you miss 100% of the shots you never take. And, you know, if you fall off that saddle and you're groveling on the ground in your own despair, you know, you're never getting anywhere. And I think that is such a huge lesson for kids to see. And sure, I'm not there at, you know, I'm not bringing their PE clothes or whatever they forget at school. You know, they're going to have to go to Lost and Found and find somebody else's sweaty ones to put on. Or just Febreze it, you know, whatever, which I've done before. I Febreze their stuff because I didn't have time to wash their PE clothes in between. But it's a great product. But anyway, but there's so many other things that I'm able to show my children, and you know, that, you know, it's a trade-off. So it's a positive one, I think.
Yeah. I want to add, because I know a lot of female writers who let themselves get guilted. And I think sometimes it's a measure of procrastination, because when you're sitting at the computer and that cursor's blinking at you and you're not sure what to type next, it gets really easy to look for reasons not to be there. I'm teaching my kids that it's okay to follow a dream, and that even if it's an unlikely dream, that doesn't mean you can't achieve it. And when this book came out, like I said, I've had some smaller things published, like in collections and under a different name. And so this was the first book I've had out with my name on it that had any kind of widespread distribution. We were standing at the information desk at a bookstore because we were trying to find the next Magic Treehouse book for my 6-year-old. And my 4-year-old was tugging on me, just insistently, Mommy, 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 Mommy. And I just one, and she finally like smacked me with the book. She goes, but it's our book, Mommy. She had seen it sitting out on the new release table, and it was just one of the coolest moments of my life. And it's great, although it's really funny because my kids they see the people that write the Magic Treehouse books, Mary Pope Osborne, as someone very cool. I was talking about, well, if she ever comes to sign books here, I'll take you to see her. They said, oh, we could actually meet a real live author?
Hello.
So, yeah, they don't think it's terribly cool that Mommy writes books yet. And I've got friends who are YA authors, and they think they're all, you know, amazing. But I think it's really important to show people that you can follow a dream and that that's okay, as long as I still feed them and wash their clothes.
Yeah.
You and your Febreze, I don't know about.
Huh? Oh, gosh, no.
Ooh, tendinitis, both hands,
And my writing is, I should have been a doctor. That's what I would have been if I hadn't been, because my writing is illegible. I don't know why. I've played piano my whole life, so I have good hand-eye coordination, and I could even tie my shoes at an early age. So it's not, maybe my thoughts go, I don't know, but I type so fast. It's just a waste of time for me to do it on pencil. Although, as a caveat, I will say when I'm thinking of an idea, just playing with an idea, I'll just go sit out like on my back porch or someplace quiet and relaxing with a pad of paper and a pencil and just jot my ideas down. But I won't be doing any real writing. I mean, that's just so not productive for me. There have even been times where I've been someplace and I've had an hour to wait and I didn't have a book or my laptop with me. And, my daughter or my son will say, well, why don't you just start writing on a pad of paper or something here, from my school bag. And I'm like, I wouldn't even know how to do that. That's just so foreign to me.
Yeah, I actually do. I have tendonitis in both hands, so I type on my ergonomic with braces on both arms and wrists. Yeah, it really is. It's very attractive. By the time I get finished writing a page, my hand's like this. But even if it weren't, I type very quickly, and it's a way to not censor yourself. Once I really get going on a page and I'm typing over 100 words a minute, that is not quite stream of consciousness, because that wouldn't be worth reading, but it's really tapped into the story. If I'm sitting and trying to write longhand, I second guess every little word, and I do that. Eventually I go back. I'm a little obsessive, and I do care about every word in the book. But if you second guess every word while you're trying to finish a draft, you never meet your deadline. So no, I like that. I think better now. Because even if I'm not writing, I'll play with the keys or tap my fingers to come up with the idea in the first place. So it's become a whole sensory thing.
No, I know.
No, that's.
But I know some people that do their first draft longhand, and I'm sorry, yeah, and I just, I'd rather sever an artery. I think so. Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah. It's writing on paper versus using your laptop or whatever. It's a totally personal thing, and the adherents of either one are very there's no crossover there. In other words, it's like being a Republican or Democrat. There's nothing in between. So I thought that was pertinent for this time of year, but anybody else? Anything else you want to say that we haven't said? And what your next book is Baggage Claim.
Baggage Claim, yes.
Okay, and that's out in next spring.
It'll be out either next March or April of 2009.
Okay, good.
And I'm not great with my own publicity. This is one of those things my publicist is like, you should really mention, and I never do. The proceeds that I get from this book, I'm donating part of them to Susan G. Komen Foundation and also to Teens Living with Cancer, which is a very small group in Rochester, New York, that got started after my stepsister died at 19, because teenagers tend to see pediatricians, which is fine, except that there are things that are pertinent to a 16-year-old girl that are not to the 8-year-old patients that they're used to seeing. And so there were a lot of areas where she kind of fell between the cracks, and when they started talking to other parents, they realized that this was a problem. If they're not seeing doctors who are used to patients who have already gone through puberty, there are a lot of issues. So they've started an absolutely phenomenal organization, and I'm donating part of to them too. So.
Thank you so much for coming today.
Yes.
And thank you, Wordsmiths, for having us.